Gang membership is exploding inside Canada's prisons, especially in regions struggling with overcrowded prison conditions. Prisoners are joining gangs to access contraband and for personal safety in an increasingly dangerous prison environment, according to documents obtained exclusively by Power and Politics. Let me give you the hot sheet on the details on what we just found. Figures obtained by Power and Politics from Correctional Services of Canada show there's been a 32% jump in gang membership in 5 years across the country. That compares to less than a 5% increase in offenders who are not affiliated with gangs. 40% of all inmates and those in community supervision in the prairies now belong to gang. That's the highest area. In Ontario, that figure is 23%. A study commissioned by the federal government 3 years ago warned about gangs in prisons, and it showed how the prison gang problem has a direct link to public safety, warning that prison overcrowding and underfunding will escalate the problem, saying that prisoners involved in gangs have a higher percentage of recidivism. So is the Correctional Services of Canada's anti-gang strategy failing? If so, why? And is the proliferation in prisons fueling violence we've seen on the streets this summer? Let's get MP's perspective on these numbers. In Vancouver, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Justice Minister, Carrie Lynn Finley's here. In St. John's, NDP MP Jack Harris is here. And with me in Ottawa, Manitoba Liberal MP Kevin Lamoureux. Good to talk to all of you. And Carrie Lynn Finley, let me start with you. These are pretty shocking increases here, over 30%, especially in places like the prairies. Is the problem here overcrowding? What do you see as the cause of this escalation in gang affiliation?
Well, there is an increase in gang affiliation in our prisons, and this is good news as far as we're concerned, because it means that our law and order initiatives are working. We have specifically targeted gang members in several pieces of legislation. For instance, murder that's affiliated with gang membership is automatically first-degree murder. That means at least 25 years in jail. We've tackled violent gun crimes, drive-by shootings, for instance, now carry a mandatory minimum penalty. So this is exactly what we wanted to do, take these particularly violent criminals off our streets and stop this revolving door of justice that so many Canadians complain about and keep them off our streets.
Now, tell me, are you suggesting that the rise in the number of gang-affiliated prisoners means they were affiliated with the gangs before they got into prison, or, as the report seems to suggest, that once they get into prison, they're becoming affiliated with gangs? What do you say?
We say that these are individuals who have been associated with gang and gang activity before they go into prison. 43% of those with gang affiliations that are incarcerated are in what could be described as loosely organized street gangs. Of course, there may be alliances made within prisons as well. But this is really as a result of us targeting those in gangs, some, as I say, loosely affiliated, and we've learned that in the Justice Committee that there is often a much more of a flow in gang affiliations in modern times with modern ways of communicating with each other than there used to be. But definitely there is a rise in those with gang affiliations, and we say that's a good thing.
Well, Jack Harris, let me ask you. I'm trying to get, is it just because more gang members are being arrested? Because one of the statistics show that in areas like the prairies, where there's the most overcrowding, the overcrowding is the worst, it's the highest member of gang affiliation. Does that mean, what does that tell you?
Well, look, I'm shocked to hear Carrie Lynn Finley say that the rise of gangs in prisons is good news. That seems to be the latest bit of conservative spin on this. Correctional Services of Canada, the people who run the institutions, their studies show that over 60% of the people in prisons who join gangs do so out of fear of other prisoners and fear of personal safety and fear of gangs in prison, so they need to protect themselves. And that's because there is a rise in violence within the prisons, prisoner against prisoner, double-bunking, bunking, overcrowding, $300 million taken out of the prison budget this year alone. You know, only 1.8% of the budget of the Correctional Service of Canada is spent on programming. And as you mentioned, recidivism for gang members is up. What that means, frankly, is that when they get out, they're going to go back in because they're going to go out and commit crimes as a part of a gang that they've joined in prison. I think this is very bad news, frankly, not good news like the government is claiming.
Kevin Lemmer.
You know, I find it amazing in terms of what Carolyn is saying. If you think it through, what she's trying to say is that, look, we have fewer gangs out on the streets and more of those gang members inside our prisons, and that's the reason why we have this increase. That's not the case. That's not the case. I think that if you check with our professional police associations across the country, you'll find that the gang membership has not been decreasing. There's no evidence demonstrating that that is in fact the case. The people that are joining and becoming more affiliated with gangs inside our prisons are doing it for reasons of safety and other issues. And maybe if the ministry spent some time in terms of talking with the correctional facility officers to get a better sense as to why those numbers are increasing. The government needs to be concerned about it for the simple reason is it's a safety issue, not only for the prisoners, but also for the guards, the correctional officers, the individuals that have to deal with the issues related to gang activities within the prison. It puts more danger within our prison system, and they should be dealing with those type of statistics and facts.
Carolyn Finlay, there's 2 points. Let me get at the first one, which is your contention here that this is good news because it shows gang members are off the streets. How does that explain, then, that thesis that in the prairies, where double bunking has jumped to 26% from 12% 4 years ago, they have the highest gang membership? Are you suggesting there's no link between the gang membership affiliation inside prisons and the overcrowding / double bunking in places like the prairies in Ontario, the 2 places with the highest gang affiliation and the most overcrowding?
We've had this debate before, I believe, and the fact of the matter is that, again, I say that is mixing and trying to create a correlation that doesn't exist. Double bunking is not an unusual measure. It's something that is internationally recognized. It's always done. It is always employed when it.
But does it?
I didn't say always. I said it is internationally employed, and it is something that is used when it is prudent and appropriate to do so.
But do these statistics, when you read them, do they suggest to you there may be a link between double bunking and gang affiliation inside the prisons at all?
No, they don't. If you look at other statistics as to where violent crime is up, you're mentioning the prairies, you're mentioning the north. Violent crime is up in those areas. So we are dealing with people coming in within the prison system that are coming out of that environment. And we are doing something about it. You know, before the Justice Committee, Don Head, who's the Commissioner for Corrections Canada, said we have a modern, adaptable, world-class correctional service. And we feel that the conservative legislation that's been brought in is going to help us do our job. We had Pierre Millette, who is the head of the Correctional Services Union, say more or less the same thing, that the measures we've been bringing in are going to help with better management in the prisons. So we're taking 2 statistics, trying to say that they somehow correlate with each other, and we see no evidence.
Well, they certainly correlate. Whether they're causal is the difference. I mean, there's a correlative. There's no question they correlate. Now, what about the? This is what Jack Harris. Riddle me this on this. CSC. I'm reading from the documents they've given us. They say here that criminal organizations, gangs, pose a serious threat to safe, secure, orderly, and efficient operations of Correctional Service of Canada institutions and community services. And remember, the Feds commissioned a report 3 years ago. They warned that prison gang system is directly linked to public safety because of the risk of reoffending. So I guess my question is, Carrie Lynn's still saying this is good news. Given those 2 things, is it good news?
No, it's hard to believe that the government is actually taking that position. I mean, we've got, for 10 years, for example, there's been Correctional Services policies that good practices are opposed to double bunking. The Minister of Public Safety, Vic Toews, has been trying to downplay it for years. But we've got these reports from Correctional Services of Canada.
But how do you know double bunking is the cause here? And Carrie Lynn Finlay says they may correlate, but why do you say they're the cause?
Okay, here's the issue. Why are gangs a problem? Gangs are a problem, and people people join them, as the Correction Service says, because they're feared for personal safety. You put people in, force them into double bunks. You've got prisoner-on-prisoner violence increasing. You've got more gang activity in the prison. You've got prisoner against guards violence increasing. You've got recidivism increasing, which means more crime in the community. So on 3 accounts, this overcrowding and the gang-related activity that's associated with it is bad for public safety, bad for the safety of prison guards, and bad for the safety of prisoners whose safety is also a concern.
So what's to be done of it? I mean, Kevin Lammer, if this is the case, would you support then the government's investment to build more cells?
I think it's about working with correctional officers and putting into place programs within our institutions that is going to downplay the need to get involved in gangs, to have anti-gang measures within our prison facilities. If we
they have anti-gang measures, they're clearly not working.
But obviously they're not doing what it is that they should be doing in terms of trying to keep individuals in jail out of gangs. The concern has got to be is that if they're in gangs in prison and ultimately they're going to be released, they're going back into communities, it's going to hurt the public safety at the end of the day. And we're trying throughout Canada to try to decrease the overall membership in gangs in our communities. It's sad to see that we have increases outside of our correctional facilities and now substantial increases within our facilities. And I think it would be irresponsible not to take into consideration the impact of high density, putting too many prisoners in the system, and not think that that's having an impact on gang participation.
Last question, you, Carrie Lynn Finley. Again, I'm struck when you say this is good news, and it may be if your suggestion is that their gang members are not on the street, they're behind bar. But how do you square your thesis that this is good news when CSC tells us criminal organizations pose a serious threat to the safe, secure, orderly, and efficient operation of institutions and community facilities? That's what they're saying.
I can answer that very easily. Where would most Canadians rather these people be, these people who are prone to violence, prone to criminality, prone to being in affiliated gangs? They would rather they are being dealt with by our professional correctional system than out on the streets and being victimized by them. That is the answer.
But Ms. Finley, you understand that CSC is saying they have a higher chance of reoffending. I mean, isn't this worrisome that they're going to come back out?
We have had testimony before the Justice Committee by correctional services. I was there too, Jack, and they said that people with gang affiliations are the most resistant to the programs they have in corrections. That does not mean those corrections do not exist. It does not mean we fund all kinds of opportunities for people to make different choices in life and get away from gangs, lead a life that does not victimize law-abiding Canadians.
All right,
that is all part of our justice system. This is only one part of it. But it is better that those people who are committed to that kind of lifestyle are being dealt with by professionals in prison rather than out on the street.
All right, we're going to pick this up. We've got to leave it here, but we'll pick it up because there's 2 points here. One contention is that these are just gang members going behind bars. Another contention is that putting them behind bars creates gang membership. So there's 2 competing theses here. We'll dig at this more with the power panel. Carrie Lynn Finley, Jack Harris, Kevin Lammer, a very interesting discussion. I appreciate that. Thanks so much.